Ready to elevate your credit understanding and score? With insider tips and a plan, you can take action to improving your score, which can save thousands in unnecessary finance charges. Let's tackle today's topic with your coach, Credit Christy.
Hey friends, it's Christy, your credit coach. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode. Today, let's talk about how to heal your relationship with money. So for most of us, we don't even realize that we have money beliefs. When was the last time you stopped to think about what you believe to be true about money? Most of us don't. And our money beliefs are due to generational teachings. It was from our environment. It's also shaped by our experiences. Some of us have had some traumatic situations when it comes to money that can create a new money belief on top of what you may have believed from the start. So these beliefs are typically unquestioned. They're also unconscious beliefs, and they're just unknown to us unless we pause to really think deep about what we believe to be true about money. So we'll have to do a little bit of work to uncover our beliefs, and what you think off the top of your head when you first start thinking, it's probably very superficial and not actually the information you're seeking. So some questions you could ask yourself is, what does your parents believe about money, or your caretakers if you weren't raised by your biological parents? Maybe you witnessed or saw some things in your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents that were very different from what you experienced at home. If that's the case, you likely created a story around money based on those examples and those experiences. So what did your environment shape inside of you? I have spoken to so many different people about this topic, and it never is shocking to hear so much variance in people's lives. I've talked to people who thought that they were rich growing up, only to find out that at some point their parents had to claim bankruptcy because they were living on loans and credit cards and could no longer sustain the monthly payments. I've talked to people that thought that they were bone broke growing up, and it turns out their parents had plenty of money. They were just very tight with it, and they were savers. So there are all sorts of money personalities. There's savers and spenders. There's the ostrich, where you just bury your head in the sand. I'm not good with numbers. I don't know math. There are risk takers and a few other types of personalities that if you really wanted to dive in, you could uncover what your money personality is, and it's shaped by your beliefs. So again, take a few minutes, start thinking about what you believe to be true about money, and who shaped these beliefs for you, and who helped shape these beliefs. I've talked to people who their grandparents had a very substantial role in their life and helped raise them, but their grandparents were from the days of the Depression era. So what kind of beliefs about money might they have that was taught to the people I was talking to? That was taught to them. So if you think about your top several beliefs about money and you had to write it out, what would it be? Is money the root of all evil? Is money easy to make but hard to keep? Is money elusive? Is money energy? If you had to explain what money is to a 5-year-old, how would you explain it? See, there might be some beliefs in there that you've just kind of been living into your whole life and you've never questioned. So when I started doing this kind of work, friends, it changed my whole life. So here I was in my mid-30s, and I was working hard. I had a great job. It paid, a normal median income wage, and yet I had no money left for fun things. So I would go out for, say, birthday dinners with my friends, and I literally had to lie when we sat down to order dinner, because what I really wanted was this beautiful steak or a salmon dinner and a nice, beautiful glass of red wine. But what I could afford was like a happy hour beer and an appetizer. So I would say, oh, I had a late lunch, or I'm not really that hungry, which just simply wasn't true. I didn't have the money that I needed for my wants. And so I had to take a look at my life. I was paying way too much money on a monthly car payment because that car, see, it wasn't just a car. It was my identity. It was a status symbol. It helped me feel important. Although it turns out nobody around me, those strangers in the cars all at the red light, nobody cared what I drove. and it didn't change their perspective of me, and I was never going to see them again anyway. So who was I trying to impress? But it made me feel important, and way too much of my take-home pay was going towards that. I also was servicing a tremendous amount of debt because of my credit card balances. I had several, let's be honest, many credit cards that were nearly or all the way maxed out, and interest rates in the teens and the 20s. Basically, all I could afford to pay each month to keep them all in good standing was the minimum payment. And so I was never getting those balances down. And if I could be really honest, every time I came across any extra money, a bonus, overtime, tax refund, something along those lines, I would just spend it. I would play. There was always this long list of things that I wanted: a new phone, a new purse, a new car. So I would just spend it instead of paying down that debt that would have freed up some extra play money every month because I wouldn't have been making those credit card balance payments. So it turns out when I really stopped to do the work, looking back at who raised me and how I was raised, I'm going back to my very young formative years, somewhere between 3 and 6 years old. And what I remember about that time is we were living in Idaho. My dad was a pastor and a principal of a Christian school. My mom had a daycare because what else do you do when you have 5 of your own children running around? And my parents also took in foster kids. They did so much good in our community, and I just remember the outpouring of love that they gave. And in my eyes, I saw them really doing good in the world. And guys, we weren't only broke, we were poor. I mean, literally living underneath the poverty level. So we got, government G's and food stamps and all of that fun stuff to keep food in our bellies, but there wasn't a lot left. And so it turns out by doing this work, I learned my money story. And my story is like this: you could either do good in this world or make money. But my examples were showing me that I couldn't have both. Like, what a deceptive lie. It's not the truth. It may have been one example of doing good in this world and they also didn't have money, but I collapsed the two to make it mean something. I put meaning where it didn't belong. So what have you heard in your younger years that may have shaped your beliefs around money? And is it possible that those beliefs are showing up, getting in the way, and keeping you stuck now? So it's funny, I have been 100% commission for many, many years now. And sometimes I'll hear somebody say, when I tell them I'm 100% commission, they go, "Oh my gosh, I could never do that." And my response back to them is, your salary, your hourly, oh my gosh, I could never do that. So it's interesting, our mindset, because sometimes we're seeking safety and security of a regular paycheck that we can count on. And sometimes we can look at it and say, you know what? I'm responsible for generating value, which will turn around into income. And I don't want somebody to cap my income. If anybody's going to do it, it's going to be me, which thankfully I've been able to break through some of those beliefs too, so that I can sustain an income that makes it worth the risk of working off of commission only and not a quote unquote paycheck. But I had to get my money story right, or I could have never taken that step into faith that I could create an income, generate money that won't have me eating ramen noodles every night. So what keeps you stuck, and what might keep you broke? Now, words have power. I used to say, "Oh, I'm so poor." Using words like that, those are lies. We're telling ourselves lies. We're not poor. Now, if you earn, say, $20,000 a year, yeah, you're underneath that poverty level, then you can claim that title of poor. But you may not have money left at the end of the month or even the week, and that might mean you're broke. And poor and broke are two very different things. So it took me working 3 jobs to pay off my credit cards that, quite frankly, were just getting me into trouble. And I spent several years working my way out of debt. I also looked at my car as not my identity. I get to create my identity. I am a child of God. I am a professional. I'm a daughter and a sister and a friend and a wife. I don't need a car to show the world my value. So thankfully I could get out of those high car payments, get into a reliable car that doesn't have to be a status symbol, because now that's not important, and really focus on my words, because guys, words have power. Our thoughts, our words, and our actions, they're either attracting or they're repelling money. So I want to help distinguish between a couple of words. Broke means you spend all, if not more, of what you earn, and poor means you're living below the poverty line because you don't create, generate, or make enough income that would get you out of that poverty level. There are many countries in our world that the general population, they are poor. But for most working Americans, we've got a better chance of being broke than we have poor. So I guess that's the good news. Let's define rich and wealthy. What would you say is an amount of money that you would need to have in your bank account for you to feel rich? How much money would you have to earn each year for you to feel rich? Well, that is different than wealthy. And rich could be a very subjective number. What my definition of rich and your definition of rich, they might be two very different things. Wealthy, on the other hand, is where your income is generated for you. You could live off of what you have. Maybe you have some passive income coming through from investments, real estate, a business you own that you don't necessarily have to show up to and run in order for it to make you money. And if you didn't work another day in your life, you could sustain your lifestyle, you could live comfortably off of what you have accumulated during these working years. Now that's wealthy, and that's a goal that I'm looking to create in my life. I no longer need to look rich. I'd rather be wealthy. So I am saving towards retirement accounts. I'm investing money into investment accounts. Real estate is an amazing way to build wealth. Buy it and hold on to it long term. And you know I'm not a financial advisor, so I'm not giving financial advice. But I will say this. We have a certain amount of working years in us, and then some time to enjoy it where we don't have to show up to work every day, God willing. So during these accumulation years, work on getting out of bad debt. What do I mean by bad debt? Debt for, say, credit cards, where you put a purchase on a credit card because you didn't work to save for that thing that you bought, and now you're repaying not only that payment, but also a hefty interest rate on top of that. That's bad debt. What I would define as good debt is if you're going to school to be in a career that requires education, such as a medical field, education, like to be a teacher, law school, something along those lines where you have to have a definitive degree in order to be in that career, then student loan debt, I am a fan of. I would encourage you to only take out what it costs for your classes and your books. Try not to live off of any quote unquote extra that they may make available to you. I know I worked full time and I went to school full time. I only took out debt to fund my classes and my books. Outside of that, I worked, I covered my living expenses, and I didn't take on too much. And that's why I was able to pay off grad school in about 5 years, which is about half the amount of time that they allow for you. And if you're going to college and taking out student loans, but you're just going because you're not quite sure where life is going to take you or what your next steps are, I'm going to leave a little bit of warning and caution here. That might be a very expensive decision. There are plenty of careers that don't require a bachelor's degree or a master's degree or something along those lines. I am a mortgage loan officer, and it required a 24-hour course and passing an exam. You only have to have a high school diploma or equivalent. There's no requirements for college education. Now, I had mentioned earlier, I do have a master's degree, but it's actually just not required for many industries. Although I love education, going the bachelor degree route isn't for everyone. So maybe put a little bit of thought into that. What's your objective? I love that question. I've started asking that on everything before I get started. What's your objective? So I had mentioned that there are money personalities out there, and keep this in mind if you're in a relationship or ever desire to be. Your significant other is likely going to be a money opposite. So 75% of couples out there are money opposites, and it's not to create conflict, although that shows up too if one is a spender and one is a saver. But it helps bring balance into the relationship. If you were both spenders, every 7 years you might be experiencing a bankruptcy, and that would not be good. But if you've got two savers, you might be putting every dime into your savings account or towards retirement and not expressing any fun and joy and travel and, toys in your life either. So sometimes when couples are the same, it can add up to trouble. So let's say you have your beliefs figured out. You can pinpoint a time or a few times in your young years where certain events maybe shaped your beliefs about money. And now you're over here going, okay, now that I've identified that, what do I do? It's now time to create a healthy relationship with money. So what does this look like? We might have to have a little bit of an attitude adjustment. I know when I'm looking at credit reports, I can tell somebody's attitude towards money and credit when I'm looking at the things that report on their credit. There might be a bunch of collections. There might be a repossession of a car, late payments, or maxed out credit cards. So what would that reflect as somebody's attitude towards credit and money? If you were a decision maker looking at that kind of a profile, would you feel confident loaning money to that person? You might say they have a bad attitude when it comes to money or just a complete disregard of credit. So now we've got to analyze our behaviors. If you've identified that you were raised in a household that just spent money, didn't follow a budget, just satisfied every want at every whim, and you're stepping into that behavior now, we might have to get a check on your actions. So start paying attention if there are triggers that show up that has you, say, spending money like that. Pay attention to your actions and your behaviors and, quite frankly, your habits. We have a habit of spending money every single day, right? I used to smoke cigarettes, and as soon as I got in my car and got on the road, the very first thing I would do is light up a cigarette. And it was just second nature. I didn't even think about it. As soon as I was done with my meal, I would light up a cigarette. It's just what I did. So what kind of habits are showing up in your life? As soon as you wake up, what's the first thing you do? As soon as you get out of the shower, what's the next thing that you do? When you get in your car, what's the first thing you do? Does it drive you to a Starbucks where you're dropping $5 for your caffeine fix? Start looking at the decisions you make on your meals, on dining out, on how you spend your money when you have a few extra dollars. Is it a habit that you look at your checking account balance and you go, oh, I get paid tomorrow so I can spend what's left in there today, as opposed to paying yourself first, which means putting towards those things that are important to you. I love having a dream bucket, and that dream bucket is financing our bigger goals. We wanted to buy a boat, and so we put aside and saving so we could pay cash for it. My car has been paid off for many years, and although it's a little bit older, it's still pretty low on miles, and I maintain it very well. So I intend on squeezing several more years out of it, but at some point I will need to start putting savings towards my next car, because obviously this older car, what is it, a 2015, isn't going to give me enough in trade-in value for the kind of car I would want to buy next. So I'll need to start putting money towards that. But we love to travel and we love to go on vacation, and I don't put any of those things on credit cards anymore, at least not a credit card I would carry a balance forward on. So I put money into my dream bucket for those vacations. And what about your first home or your next home? You've got to have money towards down payment, closing costs, and then maybe putting towards furniture that you love. So what are those things that you want to have in your future? And are you doing something about it? Are you giving up a little something today? Those instant wants that you want to have fulfilled so that you can put aside towards funding those accounts to buy a business, to buy real estate, to retire at a young age, to go on vacation, all of those things that you desire long term. And please don't tell me that lottery or having an inheritance is your retirement plan, because that's not one I would be willing to bet on. So now it's time to create some new habits. What does that look like? I would start off with following a budget. Go ahead and write down all of your fixed costs, your rent or your mortgage payment, you have a car payment, those things that are fixed costs every single month, and then go in and fill in what you spend or what you think you spend on groceries and utilities and insurance and your personal items that you purchase throughout the month. And don't be surprised if your outflow is far outweighing your inflow of cash. That's a real eye-opener for a lot of people. But we don't want it to just be a balance sheet where it's showing income in and outgoing costs. We want it to be more impactful than that. So I'd love it if you started off with putting some dollar amount or percentage of your take-home pay into a savings account. Now, you just heard me list like 10 different things that your savings could go towards. So you've got some long-term savings and some short-term savings. Start deciding what portion of your savings needs to go to what. And I would encourage you to start paying yourself right away. Even if you could only start off with $25 a paycheck or $25 a month, it's something. And that might mean you have to give up something else to move that $25. I know something that's really important to me is I want to support some really amazing causes in my local community and nationally, globally. Well, I can't do that if my income is barely covering my costs and my expenses. And I hear that from a lot of people. I want to be able to tithe. I want to be able to save. I want to be able to give generously, but I can barely cover my current expenses. Well, you can do something about that. You can reduce your costs or you can increase your income. And maybe it's a combination of the two. But get creative about what that looks like. I know I was working 2 jobs and then I had a side hustle in the evenings during the week. And I knew it wasn't forever. It wasn't fun, I'll tell you that. But it helped me get out from underneath those credit card bills. And then once I was out from underneath the credit card bills, then I could work on paying off my car. Once I had the car paid off, I really started accelerating in my savings. I put all of that money that was going towards feeding the interest payments on the credit cards and that monthly car payment, put it all into savings, and I was able to buy a home. So keep in mind, 80% of the battle is our mindset. When we have a positive mindset, then we can explore opportunities of what might be possible. You may not be able to see it right now, but if you have a negative mindset, you won't be able to see it at all. If you have a positive mindset, you could ask yourself, God, the universe, how might I be able to accomplish fill in the blank? What ways might I be able to save X dollars? And leave it open like that for opportunities to come your way. Show gratitude for the things that you already have, for the needs that are already fulfilled. So many people focus on their want and their lack and what they don't have. But what you focus on, your energy goes to that thing. And if you're focused on your lack and on your want, you won't focus on what you do have. Be grateful and express gratitude. God, thank you so much for covering my needs. Thank you for sustaining my life, that I have a roof over my head, that I have food in my tummy, that I have a car to drive. Show gratitude for whatever you can. You have eyesight. You have a voice. You have thoughts in your head. You have ways to be able to create, generate, make money. Expand on that. But it starts with the right positive mindset and with gratitude. And lastly, let's just keep in check the difference between needs and wants. Needs are shelter, food, electricity. Feels good to take a warm shower because I've been in countries where a water heater and running water was actually not an option. They had a 5-gallon tank on the rooftop that caught rainwater, and we bathed from that by pulling a cord to let water flow through, basically the equivalent of a garden hose. So let's show gratitude. Let's keep our needs and our wants in check, because when your mouth says I want, your mind hears I lack because you don't have it. So remember, words have power, and so do you. So let's create what you desire out of this beautiful life of yours. And it all really starts with questioning your money beliefs. I share this with you because I just finished round 2 of editing my book that will be out here shortly. It's called Finish Financially Free. It should be in most bookstores. It will be available on Amazon. And if what I've talked about here today is something that you can get, you understand, you'd like to know more about, then I invite you to buy my book because I wrote it for you. And if there's anything that I can do for you, if there's a topic you want to know more about, I'm happy to explore it for you and share it with you. Just send me an email at questions@creditchristie.com. And to my listeners that have written a glowing review, I appreciate you so much. And if you're getting value out of the information I share, would you also consider writing a review? With more reviews, this podcast can get in front of more people. And I don't have any commercials. I don't make a dime off of this by design because I just want to be here to serve and teach and help. So your reviews and sharing with people that you know helps me help more. People helped me in my life, and I just want to pay it forward. And if that just made you think of somebody in your life that helped you, perhaps there's something special you can do to pay it forward today. Hey, thanks for listening. I'm so glad that you've been with me here on this episode. If we haven't connected already, let's do that. You can find me at Credit Christy on most social media. And until next time, my friends, stay well.